I never thought delivering pizzas would change my life forever. I was 18 when I got the job at Tony's Pizza, a small family-owned pizzeria in the suburbs of Milwaukee. At first, everything was normal, preparing boxes, cleaning tables, helping in the kitchen. But after 3 months, Tony promoted me to delivery driver. The first few days were great. I knew my area, tips were decent, and I got home before midnight. But everything changed one November night when rain was pounding against the pizzeria windows like desperate fingers. It was almost 11 p.m. when the order came in. Tony handed me a large pepperoni pizza and gave me an address I'd never seen before, 1247 Maple Grove Lane. The GPS took me toward the outskirts, where houses became more and more spaced out until they turned into spots of light lost among the trees. The address led me down a gravel path that snaked between towering pine trees. At the end of the trail stood a 2-story Victorian house painted in a faded blue that looks black under my flashlight. The windows were covered by thick curtains, except for one on the second floor that glowed with the yellowish light. I parked in front of the entrance and noticed something strange. There were at least 12 cars parked around the house. Cars from different eras, some looked like they were from the 70s and 80s, all covered in leaves and rust. I thought maybe it was a family reunion or something. I rang the doorbell and waited. The door opened slowly, revealing a man in his 50s, bald, with thick glasses, and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He wore a gray sweater that had seen better days. "Ah, the pizza," he said in a soft but strangely excited voice. "Please, come in. It's very cold out there." Something in his tone made me nervous, but the rain had gotten worse and it really was cold. I stepped inside quickly, planning to collect payment and get out of there. The interior of the house left me breathless. The walls were covered, floor to ceiling, with photographs. Hundreds, maybe thousands of photographs. At first, I thought they were family photos, but when I looked closer, my blood ran cold. All the photographs showed young delivery drivers. Pizza guys, Chinese food, flowers, mail. Some were smiling, others looked confused. Many appeared scared. All the photos seemed taken without the subjects realizing it. "Beautiful collection, isn't it?" said the man, noticing my expression. "I've been working on it for, it must be about 20 years now." My hand gripped the pizza box tighter. "Listen, sir, that'll be $23.50. He smiled wider. Of course. But first, would you mind if I took a photograph of you? It's for my personal collection. I have a Polaroid camera right here." He pulled out an old camera from a nearby drawer. The flash went off before I could protest, temporarily blinding me. When my vision cleared, he was taping the photo to the wall, right next to the door. "Perfect," he murmured, almost to himself. "Now my collection is complete." "Complete?" I asked, though part of me didn't want to know the answer. "Oh yes, you see, I've been documenting all the young people who have come to this house over the past 2 decades. Every delivery driver, every unexpected visitor. But you're special. You're number 500. I looked at the walls with renewed horror. 500 photographs, 500 young people like me. Where are they all?" I whispered. His smile faded for a moment, replaced by something that looked like genuine sadness. "Oh, they left. They all left. Some ran when they saw the photos. Others stayed for dinner." He pointed toward a closed door at the end of the hallway. "Would you like to meet the ones who stayed? They're in the basement. They're very quiet now, but I'm sure they'd love to meet you." I didn't wait to hear more. I threw the pizza to the floor and ran toward the front door, but he was faster than I expected. His hands, surprisingly strong, closed around my arm. "You can't leave yet," he said in a voice that was no longer soft. "Not until you see the rest of my work. I have everything documented in the basement. Videos, audio recordings, 20 years of memories." I managed to break free and pushed against the front door, but it was locked. The man was approaching slowly, pulling something from his pocket that gleamed under the ceiling light. I ran toward the back of the house, stumbling over dust-covered furniture. I found a back door and yanked it open. The rain hit me like a slap, but I had never been so happy to be wet. I ran toward my car, but when I tried to open the door, I discovered that the tires had been cut. All of them. Knives were stuck deep in the rubber, and I could see air escaping in desperate hisses. The man appeared in the back doorway, still holding what I could now see was an old video camera.
"You can't leave," he shouted over the rain. "I need to document how your story ends." I ran toward the forest, hearing his footsteps splashing behind me. Branches scratched my face and roots made me stumble, but I kept running until his screams faded into the distance. It took me 3 hours to find a main road. A truck driver picked me up and called the police. When they returned to the house the next day, it was empty. Completely empty. There was no furniture, no photographs on the walls, no trace that anyone had ever lived there. But they found something in the basement. 500 folders, each labeled with a name and a date. The last one had my name and the date from the night before. Inside was personal information about me, my address, my work schedule, photographs of my house taken from outside. The police told me they had found similar folders about hundreds of other young people, some dating back 20 years. Some names matched missing person reports that were never solved. They never found the man, and I never worked as a delivery driver again. But sometimes, when I'm home at night, I feel like someone is photographing me from the shadows. And every time I hear a camera flash, my heart stops for a moment, remembering that night in the rain when I almost became photograph number 501.
Working at Mama Rose's, pizza wasn't my dream job, but it paid for college. I'd been delivering pizzas for about 6 months when I got assigned to cover the late shift on a foggy October evening. Most of my regular customers knew me by now, but this night brought an order I'd never seen before. The address was 4429 Birchwood Drive, way out in Riverside Heights, a neighborhood I rarely delivered to. The order was unusual too. 5 extra-large pizzas, all with the same toppings: pepperoni, mushrooms, and black olives. The total came to over $100, which meant a potentially great tip if I played my cards right. I loaded the insulated bags into my Honda and started the 20-minute drive through increasingly dense fog. Birchwood Drive turned out to be a winding street lined with expensive houses, each one more secluded than the last. The GPS led me to the very end of the road, where a massive colonial-style house sat behind an elaborate iron gate. The gate was open, which was lucky because I could see an intercom system that looked complicated. I drove up the circular driveway and parked near the front steps. The house was enormous, probably worth more than I'd make in 10 years of pizza delivery. Warm light spilled from multiple windows, and I could hear the distant sound of music and laughter from inside. I rang the doorbell and waited, balancing all 5 pizza boxes in my arms. The door opened to reveal a woman in her 40s with perfectly styled blonde hair and an elegant black dress. She looked like she'd stepped out of a magazine. "Oh, wonderful, you made it," she said with genuine enthusiasm. "I was worried the fog might delay you. Please, come in, come in. It's absolutely dreadful out there." I hesitated. Company policy was pretty clear about entering customers' homes, but the fog really had gotten thicker, and she seemed harmless enough. Plus, 5 pizzas was a lot to handle on a front porch. "Just set them on the kitchen counter," she said, leading me through a foyer that was bigger than my entire apartment. "We're having a little dinner party, and you've saved us from disaster. Our caterer canceled at the last minute." The house was stunning. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, artwork that looked expensive hanging on every wall. We passed a large living room where I could see several people seated on white leather furniture, all dressed formally, all holding wine glasses. They looked up as we walked by, and every single one of them smiled at me. Not just polite smiles, but broad, almost excited grins. "How many people are you expecting?" I asked as we entered the kitchen. It was spotless and enormous, with granite countertops and professional-grade appliances. "Oh, it's a very intimate gathering," she said, watching as I set down the pizzas. "Just 12 of us. We've been planning this evening for months. I started unpacking the boxes, arranging them on the counter. That's when I noticed something odd. For a dinner party, the kitchen was completely empty of party preparations. No appetizers, no wine bottles, no dishes set out. Just my pizzas on an otherwise bare counter. "That'll be $103, I said, suddenly eager to complete the transaction and leave. "Of course, dear, but first, would you like to meet our other guests? They're also looking forward to meeting you." Something in her tone made my skin crawl. "That's okay, I should really get going. Other deliveries, you know." Her smile never wavered. "Oh, but I insist. They've been waiting specifically for you to arrive. In fact, the whole party was planned around your visit." "I'm sorry, what do you mean?" She opened a drawer and pulled out a folder. Inside were photographs. Photographs of me, getting out of my car at various delivery addresses, walking up to front doors. Some were taken from across the street, others from behind trees or parked cars. There had to be at least 20 photos spanning several weeks. "We've been watching you for quite some time, Sarah," she said, reading my name from what looked like a detailed dossier. "You're always so punctual, so professional, so alone." My blood turned to ice. "How do you know my name? How did you get these pictures?" "The same way we learned your schedule, your route patterns, your habits. We're very thorough when we choose our guests of honor." I backed toward what I hoped was the way out, but realized I was completely turned around. The house was so big, and all the hallways looked the same. "The others are waiting in the dining room," she continued pleasantly. "They're so excited. You see, we have a very special tradition here. Once a month, we invite someone new to join our little family. Someone young, someone who won't be missed right away." "I have to go," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "People are expecting me back." "Oh, I don't think so. We called your manager an hour ago and told him you'd been in a car accident. Terrible fog, you know, so tragic. He's not expecting you back tonight." She moved closer, and I could see that her perfect smile never reached her eyes. "Now, shall we join the others? They're getting impatient, and when they get impatient, they get hungry." I ran. I didn't care about the pizzas or the money or anything else. I sprinted through the house, taking random turns, desperately looking for a way out. Behind me, I could hear her calling out in a sing-song voice. "Sarah, don't be rude to our guests. They've been waiting so long to meet you." I found myself in a long hallway lined with portraits. As I ran past them, I realized they weren't painted portraits at all. They were photographs. Large, professional photographs of young people, all around my age, all smiling, but their eyes looked wrong, empty, terrified. At the end of the hallway was a set of double doors. I could hear voices behind them, multiple people talking in excited whispers. One voice rose above the others. "Is she here yet? When do we start?" I turned and ran the other direction, finally finding a side door that led to a patio. I fumbled with the lock and burst outside into the fog. My car was still there, keys still in my pocket. I'd never been so grateful for anything in my life. As I started the engine, I saw lights turning on throughout the house. Figures appeared in windows, all looking out at me. In the front window of the living room, I could see all 12 dinner guests lined up, watching me leave. They were all holding knives and forks, as if they'd been interrupted in the middle of a meal. But the most terrifying part was their faces. Every single one of them looked disappointed, like children whose favorite toy had been taken away. I drove straight to the police station and told them everything. They sent a unit to check the address, but when they got there, the house was dark and empty. No cars in the driveway, no furniture inside, no sign that anyone had been there. But they did find something in the dining room. 12 place settings around a massive table, with candles that were still warm. In the center of the table was a silver platter with a dome cover. When they lifted it, they found a small card with my employee photo from Mama Rose's and the words, "Guest of Honor," written in elegant script below it. The house had been sold 3 months earlier to a cash buyer, but the realtor said no one had actually moved in yet. The previous owners had died in a car accident the year before. The police couldn't trace the phone number that had placed the pizza order, and the credit card used turned out to be stolen. I quit that night and never delivered pizza again. But sometimes, when I'm driving alone at night and the fog rolls in, I think about those 12 people sitting around that table, wondering when their next guest of honor will arrive. And I pray it's not some other unsuspecting girl just trying to make money for college, walking into a dinner party where she's not just the guest. She's the meal.
I thought I'd seen everything during my 2 years delivering pizzas for Giuseppe's, but nothing prepared me for what happened on the night of December 15th. It was a Wednesday, bitter cold, with snow falling so heavily that most drivers had called in sick. That left just me and Danny covering the entire city. Around 10:30, we got an order that made both of us pause. 3 extra-large pizzas, delivery address listed as mile marker 47, Route 18 North, near the old radio tower. No house number, no apartment designation, just that strange description. The order total was $68, paid for with a credit card that went through without any problems. Danny looked at me and shrugged. Your turn for the weird ones, Marcus. I did that creepy trailer park delivery yesterday. Route 18 North led out of town into farm country, a stretch of road I'd only driven during daylight hours. The GPS kept recalculating as I drove, clearly confused by the vague address. Mile marker 47 turned out to be in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by empty fields covered in fresh snow that reflected my headlights like scattered diamonds. The radio tower was impossible to miss. It rose nearly 300 feet into the night sky, topped with blinking red lights that pulsed through the snowfall. At its base was a small concrete building, probably a maintenance station. But there was something else there too, a cluster of vehicles parked in a rough circle around the tower's base. I counted 8 cars and trucks, all different makes and models, all covered with snow like they had been there for hours. Their windows were dark, but I could see the orange glow of cigarettes moving behind the glass. Someone was in each vehicle, just sitting there in the freezing cold. I parked outside the circle and grabbed the pizzas, trudging through ankle-deep snow toward the concrete building. There was no door that I could see, just small windows placed too high to look through. I knocked on what looked like a maintenance panel, but got no response. That's when I heard the radio. It was coming from all the cars at once, the same signal playing from every vehicle. Not music, but a voice. A man's voice speaking in a monotone, repeating numbers and letters in sequences that made no sense. 7, Delta, 42, November, 16, Charlie, 7, Delta. One of the car doors opened and a figure stepped out into the snow. It was a woman in her 30s, wearing a heavy winter coat and a knit cap pulled down over her ears. She walked toward me with deliberate, measured steps. "You brought the food," she said. Not a question, just a statement of fact. "Yeah, 3 large pizzas, $68. I held up the thermal bags, suddenly very aware of how isolated we were. She nodded and turned toward the other vehicles. One by one, doors opened and people emerged. 7 more figures, all dressed in similar winter gear, all moving with the same mechanical precision. They formed a loose circle around me, but kept their distance. "The broadcast is almost over," said a man with a thick beard. He was staring up at the radio tower, not at me. "What broadcast?" I asked, though I was already backing toward my car. "The instructions," said another voice, this one belonging to a teenager who couldn't have been more than 17. "They come every 2 weeks, same time, same frequency. Tonight's special, though. Tonight, we're supposed to get a delivery." The radio voice continued its endless stream of code words and numbers, but now I could hear something else underneath it. A low humming sound, almost like singing but not quite human. It seemed to be coming from the concrete building itself. "Who's giving instructions?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "The ones in the tower," said the woman who'd approached me first. "They've been up there for months now, ever since the government shut down the station. They can't come down, so they send us messages, tell us what they need." She pointed to the top of the tower and I followed her gaze. The blinking red lights were still pulsing, but now I could see something else. Silhouettes moving behind the glass of the small control room at the peak of the tower. Human shapes pacing back and forth, occasionally stopping to look down at us. "How do people get up there?" I asked, realizing immediately that I didn't want to know the answer.
"They don't," said the bearded man. "Not anymore. The ladder was destroyed in the storm last month. They're trapped, but they still need to eat." The humming sound grew louder, and now I was certain it was voices. Multiple voices, singing or chanting in harmony. The sound was coming from inside the concrete building, but also from above, drifting down from the control room 300 feet overhead. "They told us to order food," continued the teenager, as if he was reading from a script. "Gave us the credit card information over the radio. Said someone would come at exactly 10:47. He checked his watch. 2 more minutes." I looked around at the circle of people surrounding me. Their faces were pale in the reflected snowlight, and their eyes all had the same empty, focused expression, like sleepwalkers who'd forgotten to wake up. "Listen, I'm just gonna head back to town," I said, clutching the pizza bags tighter. "You can keep the food, no charge." "You can't leave yet," said the woman. "The instructions haven't finished. We need to wait for the final transmission." The radio voice suddenly stopped, leaving only the humming from the concrete building and the soft whistle of wind through the tower's metal framework. In the silence, I could hear other sounds. Footsteps on metal, like someone climbing up or down the tower's internal structure. "There," whispered the bearded man, pointing upward. "They're coming down." I followed his gaze and felt my stomach drop. The silhouettes in the control room were gone, but now I could see movement on the tower itself. Dark shapes descending the external framework, moving with impossible agility and speed despite the ice and snow covering every surface. "How is that possible?" I breathed. "You said the ladder was destroyed." "Not the ladder," said the teenager, with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "They don't need ladders anymore. Haven't for weeks." The shapes were halfway down the tower now, and I could see that they weren't using any kind of equipment. They were climbing down the bare metal framework with their hands and feet, moving like spiders across the icy steel beams. There were 3 of them, dressed in what looked like the remnants of work clothes. "The broadcast is complete," announced the woman, as if she was reading from a script. "Phase 1 instructions have been received. The delivery has arrived. Phase 2 will now commence." All 8 people started walking toward me at the same time, still maintaining that same mechanical pace. I dropped the pizzas and ran from my car, my feet slipping in the snow. Behind me, I could hear the humming getting louder, and underneath it, the sound of metal creaking as the 3 figures continued their descent. I reached my car and fumbled with the keys, my hands shaking from cold and terror. Through the windshield, I could see the group of people picking up the fallen pizza boxes, arranging them in a neat line on the snow. They weren't looking at the food, though. They were all staring up at the tower, waiting. My engine finally started, and I threw the car in reverse, spinning the tires in the snow. As I backed away from the circle of vehicles, my headlights swept across the base of the tower. The 3 figures had reached the ground and were now standing next to the concrete building. They were looking directly at me, and even from that distance, I could see that something was very wrong with their faces. I didn't stop to get a better look. I floored the accelerator and fishtailed back onto Route 18, not caring about the icy conditions. In my rearview mirror, I could see the red lights of the radio tower pulsing through the snow and the dark shapes of all those vehicles still parked in their perfect circle. When I got back to Giuseppe's, I told Danny everything. He called the police, but when they checked the location the next morning, there was nothing there. No vehicles, no people, no sign that anyone had been at the radio tower in months. The concrete building was empty, and there was no way to access the control room at the top of the tower. The ladder really had been destroyed in a storm. But the radio was still broadcasting. Not the number sequences I'd heard, but something else now. The police radio picked up the signal, and the officer who responded said it was just static, mixed with what sounded like singing. Very faint singing, like voices calling from a great distance. I quit Giuseppe's the next day and moved to a different state, but sometimes, late at night, I tune my car radio to random frequencies and listen. I'm always afraid I'll hear that voice again, giving instructions to people who are waiting in parking lots and empty fields, telling them when the next delivery will arrive. And I wonder about those 3 figures climbing down from the tower, and what they were planning to do once they reached the ground. Some questions are better left unanswered, especially when the answers might be climbing down from radio towers in the middle of nowhere,
following instructions that come from voices no one can explain.